November 19, 1940, Middle Wallop Airfield. Hampshire Dot Wing Commander John Cunningham sat cramped in the cockpit of his Bristol Beaufighter, eyes locked on the green flicker of the airborne interception radar glowing beside him. Behind him, Sergeant John Phillipson hunched over the bulky Mark V radar set, its cathode ray tube casting eerie shadows across his face. The equipment weighed nearly 300 pounds, filling most of the observer's position. Outside, England burned. For months, German bombers had pounded London and other British cities relentlessly. The nation's night fighters had proven almost useless at stopping them. The Blenheim fighters Cunningham once flew were too slow to catch the raiders, and when they did, their 4 machine guns barely scratched the armor of German bombers. But tonight was different. Tonight, Cunningham flew a Beaufighter equipped with operational radar, something new, something the Luftwaffe had never faced in force. Beneath his feet sat 4 20mm Hispano cannons, each shell capable of tearing through aluminum like paper. 6 .303 caliber machine guns were mounted in the wings. Together, the Beaufighter could deliver 780 pounds of firepower per minute, more than any fighter in the world. Contact, bearing 030, range 3 miles, Phillipson's voice crackled through the intercom. Cunningham banked the heavy fighter toward the target. The Beaufighter didn't respond like a nimble Spitfire. It was slower, heavier, but it carried what the sleek day fighters could not: radar, endurance for hours-long patrols, and enough firepower to obliterate a bomber in seconds. 2 miles, 1 mile, came Phillipson's calm updates. The German crew never saw them coming. A burst of cannon fire shredded their Junkers 88, sending it spiraling into the channel in flames. It was the first confirmed radar-assisted night kill in history, and it would not be the last. Over the next 4 years, the Luftwaffe would learn that the aircraft they once dismissed as too heavy, too slow, and too ungainly would become one of the most lethal combat planes of the entire war. The strike-wing tactics developed by coastal command units became the blueprint for post-war anti-shipping doctrine. The idea of coordinated mass attacks with some aircraft suppressing defenses while others delivered the killing blow shaped naval air warfare for decades. Even today, modern anti-ship missile tactics echo the same principles first proven effective by Beaufighter crews over Norwegian waters. Overwhelm defenses, strike hard, and escape fast. The men who flew the Beaufighter set standards that defined post-war air forces across the Commonwealth. Their professionalism, tactical innovation, and sheer determination, shown despite horrific loss rates, set a benchmark for generations to come. Every man who volunteered for strike-wing duty knew the odds. Only 7 out of 100 would survive. Yet they still stepped forward because the mission mattered, and because they believed their aircraft gave them a fighting chance. November 19, 1940 feels impossibly distant from February 9, 1945, 4 years and 3 months, separated John Cunningham's first radar-guided kill from the Black Friday losses over Furda. In that time, the Beaufighter transformed from a desperate stopgap night fighter into the most effective anti-shipping aircraft of the war. What Luftwaffe pilots once dismissed as too heavy to be dangerous went on to destroy more than 150,000 tons of German shipping and sink hundreds of vessels. The great irony of the Beaufighter story is that its supposed weaknesses, its size, its weight, its twin engines, were the very things that made it so formidable. Its bulk reduced agility, but allowed it to carry devastating armament and absorb punishment. Its large frame made it a bigger target, but provided space for radar, torpedoes, rockets, and extra fuel. The twin engines that made it complex to handle also made it reliable. Many damaged aircraft limped home on one, every characteristic that seemed a flaw compared to single engine. Fighters became an advantage in the missions the Beaufighter was built to fly. German pilots learned this through hard experience. The bombers that attacked Britain at night discovered how lethal 4 20mm cannons could be when guided by radar. Naval crews in the North Sea learned that coordinated Beaufighter strikes could unleash more firepower than any defensive battery could withstand. Convoy planners soon realized no route was safe. Strike wings could appear at wave-top height, torpedoes and rockets ready, and vanish just as fast. By 1943, even German intelligence reports described the Beaufighter as extremely dangerous, especially in anti-shipping operations. Luftwaffe escort pilots dreaded engaging them. Dogfighting at low altitude while trying to protect convoys was one of the hardest missions they faced. The too slow, too heavy aircraft was now destroying German shipping faster than it could be replaced. In the Pacific, Japanese forces gave the Beaufighter a name that captured its fearsome reputation: Whispering Death. Its sleeve valve Hercules engines ran quietly compared to conventional poppet valve designs. The aircraft could roar in at low altitude, unseen and unheard, until cannon shells and rockets were already slamming into their targets. The sudden, silent violence of these attacks broke both morale and materiel. But the broader lesson of the Beaufighter extends beyond aviation. In warfare and in design, purpose-built solutions outperform general-purpose compromises. The Beaufighter was never the fastest, the most agile, or the easiest to fly. Yet it was exactly what was needed for night fighting, anti-shipping strikes, and ground attacks. It succeeded because its designers focused on what mattered, not on chasing irrelevant ideals. It also proved another timeless truth: interim solutions can become enduring successes. Originally meant as a temporary fix until better aircraft arrived, the Beaufighter outlasted its successors in many roles. The Mosquito eventually took over as a night fighter, but in anti-shipping operations, the Beaufighter remained unmatched. Sometimes, good enough and ready now beats perfect but too late. The men who designed, built, and flew the Beaufighter never set out to create a legend. Leslie Freese sketched it together from bomber parts because Britain needed fighters immediately. Bristol workers assembled aircraft from Beaufort components and new fuselages because it was the fastest way to get them to squadrons. Pilots flew into walls of defensive fire because those were the missions that had to be done. By the time the last Beaufighter was retired in 1960, its lessons had spread across the world. Heavy fighters had proven their worth when properly used, and Coastal Command's strike tactics had become doctrine. The aircraft, once ridiculed as too heavy, outlasted most of its contemporaries and influenced generations of military aviation. Sign that hung in John Cunningham's squadron operations room during the dark winter of 1940-41 summed up everything the Beaufighter represented. The first duty of fighters is to destroy enemy aircraft, not to be fast, not to be maneuverable, not to be elegant, to destroy the enemy. The Beaufighter fulfilled that duty in every theater of the war, in every role, no matter the cost. Its 4 20mm cannons and 6 machine guns, mounted in an aircraft once dismissed as too heavy, shredded German bombers over Britain, sank Axis ships in the Mediterranean, annihilated Japanese transports in the Pacific, and forced the Luftwaffe to abandon daylight operations over Norway. What seemed like a liability became its greatest strength. The heavy fighter worked because it had to, because men made it work, because the alternative was defeat. That refusal to accept impossibility, that will to make imperfect tools succeed through skill and courage, defined the Beaufighter's legacy more than any technical statistic ever could. When the Northcote Strike Wing veterans gathered after the war to honor their fallen, they remembered the aircraft that brought them home: engines shot out, wings torn, hydraulics gone. They remembered the roar of cannons, the thump of rockets, the white wakes of torpedoes streaking toward enemy ships. They remembered fear. They remembered victory. And they remembered the Beaufighter, the aircraft that gave them a chance to live long enough to win. The Bristol Beaufighter, too heavy to succeed by conventional measures, but heavy enough to matter when it counted most.